live and then we can, so. So hi, everybody. I am Carol Kauffman, the founder of the Institute of Coaching with Margaret Moore and Susan David. I'm here with Lisa Lahey, who is the author of Everyone Culture and the very famous Immunity to Change. She's also teaching at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And we're going to talk about the kind of wear and tear on people in this AI whirlwind and what we can do as coaches with our clients. Lisa, take it away.
Thanks, Carol. So fun to be here with you. And this is such a ripe topic. It's just everywhere, right? So I've entitled our conversation, Human First, Self-Care in the Age of AI-Fueled Uncertainty. Because I want to be setting out just side by side the reality that out there is a whole, set of very rapidly changing shifts that are happening. And then in here, inside of each one of us, there's another whole thing that's happening. And it's just perfectly normal, obviously, for us to be feeling lots of stress amidst the uncertainty. And I come to this as a developmental psychologist. And the way I thought to frame our conversation today is to just start off with just what a few of the axioms of developmental psychology are, which starts with there is no self independent of our environment. So, of course, what's happening inside of us is some reflection of what's happening outside of us. And yet, at the exact same time, what's happening inside of us is a reflection of where we are developmentally, the extent to which we can draw on our resources, our inner resources, our outer resources, that sort of thing. And to basically be framing the acceleration of all the sort of change that's happening out there as not just something out there that we've got no control over, but that we can see that this is actually an invitation to us to grow, to evolve. So if we're feeling anxious and stressed, the point isn't to make it go away. The point is to actually lean into it and to be able to use it as this invitation to keep growing. And, it sounds, well, I guess I should say, of course, you need the circumstances to do that because there is no self independent of the environment. So we need to be in a learning zone so that we can do that growing. And this is where I think coaches come in, because for so many people who are feeling just overdone by all the demands and the uncertainties and the I don't know how to do this and what's going to happen with my job and will I be able to support my family, et cetera, it's easy to get into more of like an alarm zone, an overwhelmed panic zone. And as coaches, I think the opportunity is to actually help incubate that space where a client can safely experiment and test out some new ways of thinking and acting and feeling and seeing if they can come to basically make good use of their anxieties in a nutshell. So that was kind of how I wanted to start things.
That's wonderful. So I'm thinking of a couple of things. One is, so I was just at Thinkers 50, and one of the things that they were talking about there is what's going on cannot be resolved. We're used to encountering challenges that can be resolved in some way.
Yeah.
And this one is, how do you live with the tension in as constructive a way as possible? I'm wondering what you can share about that.
Yeah, so I think number one, we have to acknowledge that we feel the way that we feel. And that is easier said than done. I think for many people, their sense of overwhelm is not an easy thing to actually share with other people, especially in the workplace, where I think many people, walk around with, all sets of beliefs about if I was, really strong, I wouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't be feeling this way, all those things that make it hard for us to just acknowledge, okay, I'm feeling in over my head here, or something like this. So that's number one, to just acknowledge. And then alongside that, I think is, I know this is so much in the zeitgeist now, but I really believe this is so powerful for us to allow ourselves to actually feel that way and to have some compassion for ourselves. No one has ever gone through what any of us is going through right now with the acceleration of change, the pace of it. And to just be recognizing that, okay, when we're in new situations and there is uncertainty, it's a perfectly natural human response to feel anxious. And can I feel a little tenderness towards myself, as opposed to this idea of wanting to make it go away? And then the next thing, just at a very practical level, and I'm sure this is not going to be a surprise to you, but I think the use of the immunity to change tool is a wonderful resource to be helping people to navigate what to do with the feelings that they have. And there's any number of ways you could use the immunity to change approach. I'm happy to launch into it, but I'm also happy to kind of have more of a give and take here that feels
No,
right.
I would love to, let's drop the give and take for a little bit and
Okay.
give us a tutorial on immunity to change. It's so incredibly powerful. And in our May 1st and 2nd coaching conference this coming year, in fact, people will get a 3-hour version of learning the immunity to change. So let's give us a mini version and a taster.
Okay, wonderful. One of my favorite topics. So now I'm going to just imagine you're listening to one of your coaches and they are talking about, they have taken that first step of just acknowledging, I really feel overwhelmed. Okay, great. So through some conversation, I'm just going to take two different kind of paths here. One of those paths is about helping your client to be thinking about, well, what is the sort of thing that if you could be proactive around and basically put a stake in the ground and say you want to get better at this particular thing around AI, would feel to you like, oh, that would be a really big a big bonus for me. That would really help me reduce my anxiety. And, so just imagine the sorts of goals that people could come up with as they're thinking about how they could improve, get better at something for themselves, right? So they might want to do something that has to do with, like, I want to get better at kind of asking questions or asking for clearer role expectations. I want to set boundaries around my AI responsibilities, or like I want to get better at stepping up or speaking up in meetings about realistic timelines and resources for AI work. So, they can come up with any number of goals that essentially are about trying to bound their experience of being in relation to AI and all those expectations. Great. So you start there is one kind of path. And when you take this path that's very centered around something so explicitly AI, you can then invite the person to do a personal inventory. And this is going to begin to reveal the immunity change. It starts with the behavior. So what are the things that you are doing that work against your, for example, speaking up in meetings about realistic timelines? And in their honesty, feeling safe with their coach, very easy to say, well, I don't speak up, just bottom line, or I actually say yes to things. I accept assignments, right? Great. This is a first step towards owning that is what I do. And an immunity to change approach honors that there's a big part of every single one of us who wants to just nip the problem in the bud right there, to the point you were making earlier, Carol. Let's just problem solve here. How can I get better, right, at saying no? Or how can I get better at speaking up? And what immunity to change does is it basically honors, okay, you're engaged in those behaviors for some very good reasons that might not be apparent to you, are not apparent to you. But if you just stay with this and give yourself a little grace and compassion, if we take a next turn in the exercise, we'll begin to see what is actually going on inside of you that you're not aware of, that helps you understand why you do say yes, why you don't push back, that sort of thing. And so here, there's a series of questions you ask someone, but bottom line, to just illustrate this immune system, someone can end up seeing about themselves, well, I have a goal, an unconscious goal, to not be seen as, like somebody who's uncooperative or not a team player, or somebody who is kind of, I don't want to be the person who rocks the boat, or I don't want to lose relationships. So you can start seeing that if you can allow yourself to enter into the part of you that is protecting something that feels really precious, like not being regarded in these negative ways by other people, you see why you say yes, and you see why you don't push back. So that's an example of an immune system that we then invite the person to take a next step, which is to identify what are the assumptions or beliefs they hold that keep that immune system in place. And here, somebody might identify things like an assumption of, if I do push back on AI tasks, I'm going to be labeled as like resistant to this new world, or resistant to change in general, or if I set boundaries, I'm going to be seen as uncooperative, or developmentally for some people, I'll be seen as like a prima donna, I'm not seeing anybody else do these sorts of things. So that gives us then some insight into what are some of the things that would really need to change in order for me to be able ultimately to ask for clearer role expectations. Because it seems like when you start the whole exercise, that goal of speaking up in meetings or asking for clearer expectations, that seems like that's the goal, and that's what I ought to work on. But what the immunity to change process reveals is actually the curriculum that you need to take up in order to accomplish ultimately that goal has much more to do with these things that are invisible to us but drive us, and those are our assumptions. So let me pause there.
Okay, so basically, I want to identify my role in a way that I can live with. And to do that, I need to speak up. So that's my commitment to take care of myself. Okay,
Yes.
now then there's a competing with that is, oh, you may want to speak up, Carol, but you're going to get clobbered if you do.
Yeah.
And so that part then wants to protect me, but in doing so, it fights the part of me that wants to set the goal or wants to achieve. So is that kind of what you're describing?
Absolutely. So yes, the nutshell is I want to do something that is going to actually be helping me to feel like I've got more control in the world by asking for this clearer role. And just think metaphorically, I'm putting my foot on the gas in a car that's saying, go, 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 let's speak up in meetings, etc. And at the exact same time, I have this competing commitment, which is more protecting me. It's the thing I don't want to have happen. And that's my foot on the brake, metaphorically. So yes, what we're trying to capture here is, just kind of at a high level, what's the thing I really want to bring about? And at the exact same time, I have another part of me I'm not even aware of, that is like, no, you must never make that thing happen, because if you do, you're going to pay a very big price for it. So it's better to just maintain the status quo and be safe, is kind of how the psychology works.
So I just have to tell you once, remember way back when they had the cars, I think they were Audis, that sometimes the brake pedal went, I mean, the foot pedal, gas pedal went all the way down and these cars were having accidents. I was in one of those. And so there was the equivalent of the foot all the way on the gas pedal, not by me, and both of my feet on the brake. And just what happened is the car did donuts. Now, fortunately, I was in a big parking lot, so I didn't crash into anyone. It took me a while to realize, Carol, just go into neutral and it'll stop. But that didn't occur to me till I did about 5 donuts. But I love that image that there you are. I want to speak up. I want to speak up. I can't speak up. I can't speak up. And then I'm just in this cycle. And tell us how to help ourselves get out of that cycle.
Yes. Well, before I do that, one thing I love about, that sounds like a terrifying situation to be in, that you were in. And, what's so notable about it is just think about how much energy is going into that system right then. And nothing good is happening, basically, right? You're just going in circles. And that is what's happening in an immune system. So how do we get out of this? We decide, okay, I would like to get out of this. That's the first thing. And it's always a choice. Am I open to finding out that some of these assumptions that I'm holding are not actually so accurate? And so let's say, just in this example, I am willing to investigate whether if I push back on AI tasks, whether I will be labeled resistant to change or like a Luddite or something like this. And so I think about what is a safe way that I can begin to show myself that is not so correct. And the important thing from my perspective about creating tests of these assumptions is you want to try to stack the deck in a way where you try to disprove your assumption. Because right now, the way we're all operating, we're operating in a way where we're stacking the deck in exactly the opposite direction because we're playing it safe. So I will never learn whether if I push back, bad things happen, because I'm never going to push back. So here you want to very safely think about how could I, in a small way, push back and see whether something bad happens. And so you might, and this is where a coach can be really just an absolutely wonderful resource, which is with a coach, you could script and play out in a role play. This is me in a very kind of unencumbered way, asking for some kind of limit setting, some sort of pushback. And we role play this in some way where I get to actually ask the question. I get to ask for what I need, whatever it is. And then you as a coach can play a role where you have all kinds of different ways where you respond to me as the manager, for example. And the important thing here for me is to be collecting the data of what happens inside of me when I actually ask for what it is that I need. And what happens out there when I ask for what it is that I need. And the thing most of us are tuned into is, does the person on the other side kind of give me a hard time in some way? Do they make a funny face? Do they make like, draw back in some nonverbal way? Or do they say, whatever, all the things I'm expecting? Or does it just kind of flow in some way where, it seems like I actually asked for something I needed and that just kept carrying on? So that's one set of data, what happens out there. But the other that is really so important, especially from a developmental perspective, is to really be checking in with myself. How does it feel from me when I ask for something I need? Can I feel, I'm sure there's going to be a kind of nervousness, but can I feel like I can experience a little bit of agency, some sense of I have some control over something here, and I am exercising my agency. And so in the end, when we practice this sort of thing, a person has the opportunity to begin to, first of all, have a real sense of, when I do take this out into the real world with my manager, I can feel a lot more like, there's a whole range of things, but ultimately, what I'm looking to do is to experience myself as having some control in a situation where I feel like things are really out of control. And that can feel good. And I can feel good about kind of making choices to take small little safe steps, especially in the coaching situation where I'm actually challenging some of my fears. And I can feel a kind of resilience there. So that's how we begin to do the overturning of an immune system. It's by testing our big assumptions and trying to find data that lead us to see the world does not have to work the way my fearful self plays out in its mind it will.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think of two things, one reasonable, the other one just sort of ridiculous. Um, the reasonable one, what I often suggest people think about is we brainstorm. I'm allergic
Yeah,
to role play, so I won't role play unless my life depends on it, but I'm
yeah,
really happy brainstorming. Um,
yeah,
and one is to say one more sentence than you would normally, just one more sentence, and then
yeah,
see what happens. And the
yes,
ridiculous one is competing commitments at the hairdresser. You know, you're sitting there and they're coming at you with these scissors and you can feel silence. So sometimes like the dumbest things can bring out this fear of speaking up. But so I
yes.
hear you, how do you make a small experiment to see what happens? And then go from there, like do an experiment and then iterate.
Yes, and then iterate. But let's just pause on the one that you just named, which I think is a great example of you didn't plan to run a test like that. It just spontaneously emerged where somebody's coming very close to your ear with a scissor, and you realize, oh my gosh, this is one of those moments. I'm hesitating to say something because I feel like it's going to hurt the relationship in some way, right? And then maybe something very spontaneously comes to you, which is, oh, you say something you typically would not, in part because you have now, through the map making process, gotten to be a little more conscious. Oh, there, I see there's a part of me that holds back because I feel like I don't deserve, or something bad is going to happen if I do this. So I love that example.
Well, there's a lot of things that kind of make us push us back into a kind of child role. I have
Yes,
to be good, I have to obey. So my competing commitment can be, I need to obey because when I was little and I didn't obey, I got hammered. And
right.
so I bring that protection with me wherever I go. And maybe I'm not even aware of it. And so what you're saying is when you feel, gee, I'm not doing what it is I kind of want to do, to go, oh, I'm not doing what I want to do. Interesting.
Yes,
Okay, what is holding me back, and kind of what I like about the model is isn't that I've got some kind of pathology. It's I have a competing belief system, and my competing belief systems kind of need to talk to each other. So this one can say, well, listen, we really want to speak up. Oh no, wait, I feel like kindergarten. Like, no, we can't. But then to say, okay, just try one more sentence, just try this
yeah,
experiment, see what happens. So
yes,
I like it because
yes,
it's not
yeah.
a pathology model.
It is definitely not. It's more about development, and the fact that when we do develop, we don't all develop at the same rate inside of ourselves, so to speak. And that parts that have been protecting us, parts that are fearful, are very practiced at doing the safe thing and don't recognize how frequently they are engaged in that behavior. So I would say, if somebody has got a little bit more wariness about actively testing a big assumption right out of the box, one thing you might just choose to do is just watch, when do you see your big assumption asserting itself? And just pay attention. Oh, it just happened there when somebody cut in front of me in a line, or it happened just when I went to go. So total non-work situations. Somebody said to me, I was counting on them to do something and they said they couldn't do it. And I didn't think to say, do you have another idea how this can get whatever? And then that you just start realizing, wow, this is present.
Sort of just name it's happening, because there's a lot of
Yeah.
research. Linda Barrett, whatever her name is, anyway, the How Emotions Are Made person.
Oh,
Um,
Lisa Bear.
Lisa, oh
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting because in her research, it's just naming something increases your sense of mastery and agency, and you're more likely to be able to master the experience just naming it, as opposed to having it just driving you, as you said, automatically.
Right. And we know that when we start naming things, we are using a different part of our brain than when our fear system is operating. And the more we can help our fear system to feel safe through something like naming, that's a real resource for us.
So someone had said something that's sort of out of the realm of what we're talking about, but you might have some thoughts about it.
Yeah.
I don't particularly, but you might. But it's very powerful. A LinkedIn user says, it sounds like there's a collective assumption, and it's interesting about collective
Yes.
assumptions,
Yeah.
that, quote, if you don't use AI, you're resistant to change. And
Yeah.
this person mentioned, I think we should challenge that at a collective level. There are many people pointing out the potential dangers of AI. And just, do you have any thoughts about that? That question would not have come to my mind.
Yeah. Well, the first place that I go is I pause around any kind of either or framing of, do we use it or don't we use it? Because I think that will often get us into difficulty where we're having to make some sort of one way or the other decision. And my own sense is that we will do ourselves, we'll do better by ourselves and collectively if we can ask a question, which is, when are the under what circumstances do we use AI and towards what ends? And when do we know when using it in those ways ends up tipping us into the dangerous point, because that starts to give us some kind of shining the light on when should we not be using it. And those are things you can proactively be thinking about. So, I mean, I immediately come to more of like an image of a polarity map, so that we don't get into the either or, and we try to recognize what are the upsides and the downsides of the overuse of either of those two ways of looking at it.
So next month, a woman named Rosette Cataldo is going to be joining us talking about AI. She sent me an article today about how one study where AI gave advice to women in terms of asking how much money they should ask for a salary that was lower when you put in the same information but said it was a man. So there's just so we'll talk about some of those thornier issues next time on AI, but there's so much richness there. But take us further on the ITC journey, or address that, whichever one you want to do.
Well, one thing I do want to say before we end, kind of thinking about just going back to the title of this, which is
Human First.
Humans Care, which is to say that the second path I didn't really spend much time on, that you can use the ITC approach with, really is just about somebody establishing self-care routines. And we know that there are just so many assumptions that are any of us could hold individually, but are also like some collective sort of thing around self-care. Is, it's selfish, or if you are engaged in self-care, it's judged as weak, or you got to earn the right to take care of yourself, so you keep working, or small breaks are not anything that's going to help me with self-care. You got to go for the whole big 9 yards or not. So all of these things are also worth naming as assumptions when somebody comes to identify for themselves a wish to get better at engaging in self-care routines. And I guess I do want to leave with helping people to see that this frame of selfishness, I think, is just not being very generous to ourselves. And we're also familiar with yes, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first if you're going to help somebody. But there's so many metaphors around us. If we could just lean into these, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And the more we keep giving and giving, and the more we keep trying to show that we can do all this AI stuff and that we can be, counted on to be a team member and so on, you cannot keep giving. You will pay a price at some point, and that may be burnout. That may be that who knows what form it will be, but you just cannot keep giving. The gas tank and the fuel metaphor. You cannot keep giving. So I do want to leave people with just the permission to take care of themselves. And if that's a hard thing to do, to not give yourself a hard time about that, but instead to really use it as a resource to try to understand what's going on for me, that I can use this as a developmental opportunity to stretch myself, to take care of myself.
Yeah, I think two things. One is when, with yourself and with other people, notice an assumption. What I'll say to my leaders about something is I'll say, you may be right, but this is an assumption. We need to just label, This is an assumption you're making. You might be right, but it's an assumption. Last is, Lisa, if people want to be in touch with you, how do they do that?
Let's see, through mindsatwork.com.
Say that again.
Minds at Work.
Minds at Work.
MINDSAT, the letters AT, work, WORK, .org.
.com. All right.
Listen to me.
Yes.
I'd love to hear from people.
All right. And everybody, thank you for joining us. And we'll meet again first Wednesday of December, 12 o'clock noon Eastern. And we'll continue the discussion of looking at AI. And I've been interviewing CEOs on how they feel about it. So we will continue our conversation. Lisa, thank you.
Thank you, Carol.